Hey y'all, I am here with, I know her as Baby K because she was a youngster. I was incarcerated with her, and she was kind of a wild one while we were incarcerated. Please meet Kay. Hi, Kay.
Hi, Marcy.
It's so good to see you. I was just telling you before we hopped on here how incredible it is. I see you on TikTok. You're kind of starting your own platform there.
Well, right now I'm a stay-at-home mom. We just sold the shop that I'm in today so that we get to move, and I'm going to a bigger town. That way I have more job opportunities, I have more of a leverage to get back on my feet after this a terrible relationship that I just went through, which I've come to find out I have some good advice about. It does not matter how long you have known somebody, you do not know who they are until you're in a relationship with them. So I'm a little bit out of controversy of some people say that healthy relationships are good when you start off as friends, right? My ex, I knew him for 20 years. We have known each other since we were 4 years old. We went to Head Start together here in this town. I did not know that he was manipulative, narcissistic tendencies, bit of a player, and a very good master manipulator. But what really broke the ice with me is because, you know, I got out in 2018. This month, actually, this month on the 25th will make 5 years that I have been out of prison. And I never thought that I would make it this far, ever. Because, like you said, I was a wild child. Um, I was crazy in prison. I don't know if you remember the girl that I was with, Adelie. We are actually still very good friends, believe it or not, after the whole relationship that you saw spill out in prison, me running into other people's buildings and pods and sitting beside them for like 5 minutes without them realizing like I was a bit, crazy. And then, I grew up in the system. And, people say that that is not something to be proud of, but I am. Because before I started getting in major trouble, my very first charge, I was 11 years old. And it was for a domestic violence against my mother. We got into an argument and I got physical. And she said, you know what? I've had it. I've had it. I'm calling the cops. This is it. And, at the time, I just thought, she didn't love me. She didn't care about me. Everything that happened leading up to that point, I just thought it was all her fault. All my problems really started at 7 years old when I witnessed my dad beat my mom. And then, after that, it was just an emotional roller coaster. And my life, I felt, went downhill. And, my great grandparents died. Um, we moved out of my childhood home. We were living in Section 8 here in Livingston. And I was looking at it as, okay, my life is over. And then, things started happening within the home. I will say it. I will not say who, though. Um, I was sexually assaulted by a family member for years. And that's what started all my anger issues more so than I already had. I went through so much medication, so many hospital visits. I've been to Waco Center for Youth. I've been to Kingwood Pines Hospital in Kingwood. I have like 64 admissions over there, just trying to run away from situations. And the best way that I could express myself was through anger and through physical altercations. And, I look back at it now and I'm like, okay, I was crying for help, but I didn't know exactly what help that I needed or that I wanted. I just didn't want to be in this situation anymore. So I decided that I was just going to start doing whatever I wanted to do. Nobody could tell me nothing. This is when baby K really started, like I was setting playgrounds on fire. I was hurting my little sister. I was hurting my mom. I was hurting my grandparents. I started, something I never really admitted to my mom, but I'm sure she'll see now, which is fine. But I started dealing drugs in section 8 with my friends. I started drinking alcohol. I started cutting. I became a daredevil. I was not doing good in school. Um, I was so bad in school, in fact, that the Livingston ISD just would pass me on every year so that they didn't have to deal with me. So I had absolutely no education before. Really, well, I wouldn't say absolutely no education. I would really say very little. Um, I When I got locked up, it was for, I violated probation for one. I was on house arrest on an ankle monitor from hitting my mom. They did not take it easy on me. Um,
First, I want to tell you that there are grown women, there are 30-year-old women, 40-year-old women who don't know how to process their anger. So
right,
it is not unexpected for a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old young lady to process all of that trauma that you took in properly. So
right.
I want to make sure you're giving yourself some grace with that.
Oh, of
Um,
course. I mean, I'm fully aware that, you know, some of this is mainly not my fault, but some of it is, because I look back at it now and I think to myself sometimes, maybe I should have told my counselor at school that was trying to help me. Maybe I should have, told my godmother that I went to her daycare that she owned. You know what I mean? And I do not regret the way that I handled it, but I still do go back and process, what could I have done better? Because this is a mistake that I made that altered my life and made it very hard after I got out. There's not many resources out here, or wasn't when I got out. I got in trouble a lot. I finally caught my very first felony. I believe I was 12 for breaking and entering. Because when I was a kid, and this is something I've never admitted out loud, so it's probably going to feel good. When I was a kid, I was a kleptomaniac. I mean, Marcy, I was bad. I was stealing from my grandparents. I was stealing from my mom. My mom had these old pack of cigarettes that were Harley Davidson, that were from a dead family member that my mom was holding on to because she cherished. Not only because it was Harley Davidson, but because it belonged to somebody that was no longer here. I smoked that entire pack of cigarettes. And when my mom told me whose they were, I remember feeling that I did not care. I was at that point in my life where I just didn't care about anything. I was doing really reckless things, breaking into houses and sneaking out in the middle of the night to go deal drugs and be with boys and drink. I caused myself to be essayed in the middle of the woods by my own boyfriend the first time I ever, smoked marijuana. And the sad thing is that my mom, if I felt like if I told my mom about it, that she wouldn't believe me because of all the things that I had already done to her. I dragged my mom through the dirt. And honestly, there's really no excuse for me now that I'm looking at it older. There was no excuse for me to do what I did to her because none of it was her fault. She didn't know what was going on in my head or how I was dealing with things or what I was going through. It wasn't until TYC I actually came out about it and then found out that the same person was doing it to my little sister as well. I mean, now I forgive this person because we were little. We were little kids. What 9-year-old, what 10-year-old do you really know that knows anything about sex? They don't, they don't know what they're doing. And because me and this person both have mental health issues, it kind of made me come to an understanding. Obviously, I set boundaries because I have a 3-year-old daughter now. I have a little person to protect. But like when I went to TYC, I was bad in there too. I was running around the campus, making guards chase me. I was fighting guards. I was beating up people.
How old were you that first trip to TYC? That was when you were 12?
No, I don't exactly remember what age I was. I believe I was like 14, maybe. Because I did have a few years before I met the TYC. My first charge was the assault on my mom. My next charge was breaking and entering, which put me on house arrest. Then I could no longer go to public school, having a felony and being on an ankle monitor and all that. So they sent me to alternative school. And once I proved myself, I was able to go back. But I got into a fight with somebody in the AEP classroom and they suspended me. And then I came back and they decided that they were going to put me on one-on-one teaching. So I was in a classroom. These classrooms are almost like just gutted out mobile homes, really, or like just the shell of a mobile home. That's what the classroom was. It was at our old high school that was no longer being serviced because they had built a new one, but they still did alternative school over there. And my one-on-one teacher would provoke me. She would get in my face and I would just tell her, like, get out of my face or I'm gonna beat you up. Like, get out of my face. And she wouldn't do it. So that first time I felt like, okay, well, I'm gonna warn you then. And I slapped her. Then they called my mom and they suspended me for 2 days and I came back. They put me back in the classroom with her and she did the same thing. And I kept telling her, you better get out of my face. She didn't listen. So I slapped her again and I knocked her glasses off of her face. And then I ran out because I knew this time I was going to get the cops called on me. There was just no way that I was going to keep getting away with assaulting this woman. I thought, maybe if I can just run and get off the property, I don't live that far from here. If I have to, I will run from the cops. I just need to get home. My room was my safe place. I never made it because she ran out. I underestimated this old lady, okay? She ran out so fast after me and she tackled me to the ground and she held me to the ground. The principal came running out and she was holding me to the ground and like her knees were just pinned onto my biceps. And I just remember like feeling my tendons inside of my bicep move and it did not feel good, Marcy. It hurt. And I kept telling her to get off, get off. There was no way for me to defend myself though, because my legs were being pinned down from the principal. She had my arms like this, so I couldn't grab nothing, couldn't hit. And then for some reason she decided to grab me by the hair. And I remember, she kind of had her hand like this. And I remember jerking back and then just grabbing onto her with my mouth. And I did not let go. And I got arrested. I got sent to juvenile. I think I was in juvenile detention in Montgomery County for 2 to 3 months before they actually set my court date. Or at least it felt like 2 to 3 months. It could have just been 2 to 3 weeks. But when you're sitting inside of a cell with just a metal bunk, or not even a metal bunk, it was a concrete bunk, with just the mattress and a blanket, and there's no window, you kind of lose track of time. You don't know when is night, when is day, what time is it? You don't know. You just basically go off of when they feed you, when they take you to rec, and things like that. And then I got sentenced to TYC for 9 months to a year. What got me was, just because you are sentenced 9 months to a year in the TYC prison does not mean that once that 1 year mark hits, you're gone. You go home. That's not what that means. If you didn't work your program, you can stay there until you're 18 years old, until you age out. But I got there, and Marcy, I did not wait. Okay. Fresh out of intake, second shift, my first restraint on my first day to TYC. And I remember the lady that restrained me, her name was Miss. I mean, this woman was huge, Marcy. She had to have been at least 400 pounds. And I'm this short, not even 5 foot tall yet, little girl. And she just sat on me until security got there. And security in TYC is our segregation unit. I just kept getting in trouble, kept doing 180s, which is basically when you're running around the campus and you're making all the guards chase you. Or I was getting into altercations, fights, refusing to go inside of my room, or sitting on top of my shelf where they can't see me. I was just being a hard-headed brat in jail. And then when I turned 17 in 2014, I mean, unless you were really cool with the officer, but he sexually assaulted me. He made sure that none of the cameras would see it. Look, after being in prison, I looked back at it and I was like, he set me up. He got away with sexual assault, and I'm going to prison for putting him in the hospital. In court, they said we were in there for 30 minutes because the pod door was jammed. Y'all did that on purpose because there's a back door to that pod for an emergency exit if a fire were to break out. And y'all were playing with a door for 30 minutes while me and this man were literally going toe to toe.
First of all, I'm so sorry that that happened to you, because you didn't deserve that and you didn't invite that. No matter how you might have been acting out, no matter how you might have been processing what had happened to you in the past, you didn't invite that. We get reports like that all the time from the youth prisons in Texas. It's not an uncommon thing. The story that you just told, we hear a few stories about adult prison that happens, a little handful of stories, but we hear massive amounts of kids that have previously been incarcerated or are currently incarcerating, telling their family members stories just like that. And I'm curious if you were aware of any other situations similar to that, what you experienced.
I wasn't aware of it happening to anybody else. The only situations that I was really aware of is the medical neglect that we received. Like one time I was restrained and they split my elbow completely in half. You could see my bone. They did not take me to medical. Per policy in the youth prison, if there is a restraint made and they are saying that they need medical attention, you are to take them to the infirmary right then and there after they calm down. They did not do that to me. I called my mom and told her what they did to me, and it wasn't until she called the ombudsman,
Ombudsman.
however you say it, and then the OIG got involved, and you know, um, they couldn't get them on the unlawful restraint, but they did get the officer on medical negligence. I think that is one of the main problems, especially in youth prisons, is that medical negligence is a big thing. It really is. I mean, even in TDC, after restraints, I've seen girls get restrained and slammed on the top of their heads, and they don't take them to medical. You know, and you would think that with the kids it would be more of a priority because here's this big human being having to tackle this other human being that is half their size, if not less, to the ground. You're bigger than me. At the end of the day, there's more of you than there is me. I'm only one person. Y'all are a lot. And even from our TDC experiences, when an inmate gets restrained, it's not just one guard. It's a flock of them. Because if one guard goes in and that guard is friends with another guard, they're going to jump in because they're friends with them. You know, these guards have friendships outside of work too, so they get really close to each other and they start teaming up. I've seen that a lot, especially in TDC. I was picked on a lot in TDC. Half of my acting out, if it wasn't about my relationship, it was because a guard was messing with me. I will say that I never just acted out out of nowhere. I was provoked. And I know that you've seen me, get restrained. You've had your fair share of seeing me act crazy and things of that nature. When I was at Lane Murray, this is right before they decided to G5 me, and they G5'd me because they knew what they did was wrong. I don't know if you remember yeah, Mr. Jose. Yeah. He lied and said I threatened him and that he was in fear for his life. And back then I was thinking, here you are trying to be in a inappropriate, illegal relationship with me, and because I got in your face and told you to leave me alone, you're going to say I threatened you. And at the time I was also thinking, Marcy, like, you're an active military member. You are literally trained to kill people, and you're scared of little old me, really. You're in fear for your life after all that military training. Please. Like, that case right then and there should have just been thrown out. Because there is no way somebody with the military background or anything of that kind of nature is scared of an inmate. They dealt with bombs. They've dealt with sniper rifles. They've dealt with all these other things. So I was set up. And that day I was so mad. They called everybody in on me. And, when it's me, it's me. It's not just 5 guards, it's 10. I was getting into it with the lieutenant. I cannot remember her name. I want to say it was, but I'm not sure. So during this restraint, she put my head, and, in the vestibule, in that area, right when you walk in the door, in that G4 dorm, there are no cameras right there. That is a blind spot. Everyone knows that. It's not until you get into the pods that maybe 1 or 2 cameras work if you're lucky. She put my head in between the break room door and the break room door frame, and she bashed my head in with the door. And from that day, I have a traumatic brain injury that causes me to have seizures. She altered my life forever. I will never be able to get a driver's license. I can't go on roller coasters. I can't take my kid to Six Flags and ride on the roller coaster with her. I can't take her to rodeos because my anxiety triggers stress and then it triggers my seizures. Because, being locked up, nobody ever really wants to talk about how you become dissocialized. I don't like being around people. I don't like being in big crowds. I don't really have friends that I talk to on a day to day basis because I don't like socializing, which is kind of weird for me because, in prison, I never shut up. I was either known as Baby K, the annoying little kid, or Baby K, the crazy lunatic. Don't date her. Do not get in a relationship with that girl. But, after getting out, I went through a lot of stuff.
You talked about an officer saying that they felt threatened by you. And I just wanted to say that that is kind of an out for an officer when they want to, in prison, we call it cross them out. And we have seen it so many times. I have personally seen it a dozen times
Mhm.
where an inmate or an offender, however you want to word it, someone that's incarcerated does something to anger the staff, and
Right.
either they're mouthy, they might be out of line, but they're certainly not threatening them. They're certainly not acting in a threatening manner. But the officer, that's just one word from an officer can completely change the scene, because when you're incarcerated, your word means nothing. So I kind of wanted to reiterate what you were saying and validate that story because we've seen it time and time again. When you were 17, you caught the charge that landed you in TDC. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
I want to know how it felt going into TDC, because you were kind of a baby, but you had also had this experience in the youth prison system. What did it feel like going into big girl prison essentially as such a young woman?
It wasn't really real to me until I went to court and they from court took me to the county jail. I did not go back to TYC at all. I went into court. I was scared, Marcy. I was so scared. I was so scared to the point before they transferred me to the county jail, they had to bring me scrubs because I crapped myself. I'm 17. I just got a 4-year sentence, plus I had to put my hands on registry. It was either that or get an aggravated charge, and I didn't wanna be in prison for the rest of my life. I did eventually wanna get out. Once that gavel went down and everything happened, one of my favorite staff members from the TYC actually took that day off for me. I used to call her Bully, and she used to call me her leprechaun. Or I'm sorry, I should actually correct myself. Not sure if he'll see this, but I greatly appreciated him. There were guards in the TYC that actually did care. My people there outside of the other kids, it was Mr. It was Mr. Mr. Those were the people that would actually, sit down with you and actually talk to you, that genuinely actually cared and didn't have some type of ulterior motive behind what they were trying to do. Showed up at my court date. She helped me, or he helped me after I went to the bathroom after, they said 4 years TDC. She was literally, or he was literally the last person I hugged in the free world. And then they took me to the county and I was put in a cell, in a holdover cell. It was me and this girl, Ernestine Perry. And then we were up there for like 8 hours. It was freezing cold. Whatever you were in is what you were in, and that was it until you were taken to the back. And after 8 hours, they took Perry back first, and she was scared. They actually, I think they actually had to drag her back there because she didn't want to go without me. But for some reason, Perry and a few other of the other kids saw me as some big, hard, macho kind of person. And to be honest, I did act hard. I know, you saw that. I acted hard. I didn't let people disrespect me without that, me letting them know, hey, yeah, no, not gonna happen. So she was scared to go back there. And then I finally went back there and they ended up putting us in the same tank. So it felt a little bit better because I was already in there with somebody that I knew. Now, had I been put in there, which I'm sure other people have been separated, us TYC people, I'm sure they separated us and put us in different tanks. But me and Perry, we ended up going in that same tank together. So I felt a little bit more comfortable. It wasn't as bad as everybody growing up tells you it is. It wasn't great either. I've had to defend myself. When they transfer you to the Brown County Jail, they're not supposed to put you in a general population tank. You're a minor. They're supposed to put you in a segregation cell, but they don't do that. And they put us in with the adult. And at that age, I was so easily manipulated. And I think that had a lot to do with the trauma that I went through. Manipulation is really all that I knew. So it wasn't foreign to me. It didn't come out to me as, oh, this person's trying to manipulate me. How I saw it was, oh, this person's genuine, right? And I fell into a lot of that, even in TDC. People who I thought were my friends were my friends. I quickly fell into the jailhouse persona. That's one thing about me till this day is I easily adapt to my environment because I was constantly moved around as a kid. You're gonna go to this facility, you're gonna go to this psych ward, you're gonna go to this jail, you're gonna go and do that, you're gonna whatever. So it was really easy for me to adapt for the simple fact that I'd already been locked up for a long time. I will have to tell you that back before I even went to TYC, I didn't stay out of jail for more than 3 days at a time. I think the longest I ever stayed out was a week. So I kind of just mashed it all together and just it's a whole 10 years, because in all honesty, I really never saw the free world going back and forth as a kid. I got to enjoy some things that my siblings enjoyed. I would go camping with my grandparents or something. And it quickly stopped because I was so much trouble and I was always going back and forth into jail. So all of it just kind of like runs together for me. And I can only pick up bits and pieces of when I was out. If you mash it up all together, I was incarcerated for 10 years because rather you go to a psych ward or a behavioral facility or a TYC or a TJJD or whatever, you're locked up. You have no freedom. Your rights are taken away from you. You're medically neglected. You're hygienically neglected. In TYC, I will say hygiene, we were completely taken care of. For Christmas, they would put so much money on our books. They would get donations to put so much money on our books for Christmas. We would get stockings, pajamas, socks, things like that. And those are things that I felt I took advantage of once I went to TDC. Because, in TDC, once you were out of Plain State, there was no indigent hygiene. They sit there and they put it on their policies for everybody out in the world to see, oh, our unit's an AC unit. Oh, our unit is we take care of the indigent. We provide. It's all lies. It's all lies. And that's why, like, I know this is about my story, but that's like why I'm so proud of you because you're trying to change it from the outside in. That just motivates me more for what I want to do because I want to go back into the prison system. But on the other side, instead of wearing the white, I want to wear the gray. I feel like the inmates need somebody, those incarcerated people, they need somebody who they can actually relate to. And who better to relate to than somebody who's already been there, done that their entire childhood. I lived in the justice system. I know how corrupt it can be. I've witnessed guards doing extremely illegal things, like unaliving inmates, beating them up, cutting them, and I feel like, I'm not going to stop at just, trying to be one of those guards that humanize them the way they should be humanized. Are there inmates that are problem inmate? Absolutely. Do I think that sometimes the inmate do something to put themselves in a situation that they could have avoided completely? Absolutely. Because there have been situations that I put myself in prison that I wouldn't have even got hurt, but that does not excuse the fact that there are guards that come there to just deliberately hurt those people, because how I see it is, Marcy, backtracking to the whole youth and sexual assault thing, y'all are hiring people who don't have records, right? Because y'all think those people are safer, because y'all think that those people are upstanding citizens. Let's go back and look at how many of these people in the last 5 years that I have been out are now incarcerated because they got caught up. Or I strongly believe it does not matter what is on my record or what is on their record. That does not make me who I am. What I chose to do afterwards is who made me who I am. You can either take it with a grain of salt and make your life better, or you can get out and you can just continue doing the same thing and end up dead on the side of the street. And I feel like that they should set up a system where they give felons more of a chance that actually want to go into the justice system and turn it around, because they know it's corrupt. And as much as they say that they're trying to fix it, they're not doing it good enough. Who is better at fixing something than a person who actually lived in that situation? I feel like I could change the prison system from the inside out just by starting to humanize inmates. My mom works at the Harris County Jail. Okay. My mom has never been to prison, but my mom goes to work and she knows that these people are humans, just like her. Everybody has their past, everybody does what they do. But the thing is my mom chooses not to set herself up to be able to dehumanize them, because it is just in natural nature for us human beings. If I'm to find out about your charge and I don't like it, my complete persona about you has changed. My outlook on you has completely changed. You know what I'm saying? So my mom goes in there and she does not look up their charges. She doesn't want to know. She already knows that she is working with mainly sex offenders. She doesn't want to know their charge. She doesn't want to know how old their victims were. She doesn't want to know what they did. She doesn't want to know any of it. Because if you are a guard and you know somebody's charge, you set yourself up for failure to dehumanize them. You did that. You corrupted yourself. I do plan on going to work for a prison in the near future, hopefully.
Do you know Texas state laws on that? Because I don't.
They go off of your conviction date. So mine was in 2014. So next year, mine makes 10 years. As long as you stay out of trouble, I mean, you can't have police reports. You can't on yourself. Somebody can't file a police report on you. You cannot have been locked up after getting convicted and being released in the 7 years of between the conviction and, right now my conviction is 9 years old and I have been out 5 years. So I can technically actually go back in and be a CO. Now you cannot work as a police officer. They are not going to give you a gun. And that's just the law that's not going to be, I don't feel like is ever going to be lifted. And you can't go into, I know for a fact that you can't go into the Harris County Jail as a convicted felon. But there is a TDC prison for men that is just down the street from all of those jails that I did not even know existed until just recently when my mom got this job. As long as you stay out of trouble for 7 years, you can go into the medical field. You can get your TWIC card and work on plants. As long as you don't have drug related charges, you can be in the medical field and things like that. That's mainly what they look at. Now, if you're going to like a nursing home or something like that, they're kind of iffy on assault. It is still very much a hit or miss, regardless if they're not supposed to hold it against you, they still do. That's something that, you know, being a felon, we're gonna have to live with for the rest of our lives. There are things that I wish I would have known back then before getting out. And one of those things were you can make really good money. Cause after I got out of prison and I met my daughter's father in August of 2018. I got into a relationship with him, had sex for the first time, willingly anyway, ended up pregnant. And then the abuse started with him. He pointed a shotgun at me and I ended up going to a maternity home and lying and saying that I was pregnant, which I thought I was lying. Come to find out the next morning, I was not lying. And this was in January of 2019. And this is when I came to meet my spiritually adopted family. They were my house parents at the maternity home. I showed up on their doorstep in the middle of the night, lied to them to their faces, and told them I was pregnant. They gave me a room. The next day, they drug tested me, which I told them would come up positive because I was smoking marijuana, which I knew I was going to do that when I got out. I knew that that was something I was going to do. The next day, she woke me up. She drug tested me. Then we took a pregnancy test. She did not realize that day that those tears were tears of shock, utter shock. Marcy, I really thought I was genuinely lying to this woman. I thought, here I am. It's fixing to come out negative and she's fixing to kick me out because it was a maternity home for, domestic violence survivors. And when that little bitty test had 2 lines on it, I was scared. I did not get the reaction that I wanted out of my family or out of him. I got, okay. Later on down the line, because of my past, habitual lying, being a klepto, things of that nature, it was hard for my mom to believe me. And I understand that. She didn't believe me until I started showing.
It's funny how that works because trust doesn't just come back. When we get out of prison,
No.
we have dug ourselves in a little bit of a trench, and
Right.
probably with me, I had to tell so many lies during my crime, and with your history, I'm sure there were lots of lies in that also. But
Right.
it's a work in progress, right? After 5 years that you've been home, how is the trust level now? Like with your mom, for example.
I mean, our relationship is great. Or at least I feel like it is. Now, do me and my mom still bump heads and yell at each other and argue and call each other names? And yeah, we do. But I kind of think that just comes with a mom-daughter relationship in general. I don't know anybody that just 100% gets along with their mom. You know what I mean? Nobody gets along with their parents. It took a lot of proving myself because when I got out, my grandparents and my mother, they all said, we give her 6 months, she'll be right back in. And I can't tell you how good it feels every year that this anniversary date comes around and my grandpa gets to eat his words again and again. So, but I think I'm finally to the point where my mom trusts me. I have a kid now. I'm a whole lot more mature than I was before. Believe it or not, I have not gotten in trouble not once after being released. A lot of that had to do with the fact that, I went through this abusive relationship. I ended up pregnant. I met Michelle and Wayne, became really close friends with their oldest daughter, Jonna, who is my daughter's second mom by Alessia's choice, of course. But I honestly wouldn't have it any other way because the biggest thing that I wanted for my child was for her to have two parents because I didn't. My dad messed up and he went to prison and they got divorced and everything. So it was big for me for her to have two parents. And I really wanted her to have her dad. But, he just can't get his life together. He can't get off of drugs to save his life. He can't stop hanging around people that hurt people, that don't respect women. I'm not going to have my child around that. He has not proved himself to change one bit. At this point, I'm just like, you know, after I had Alessia, when I got pregnant, that's what grew me up. Marcy, I was about to go down the wrong path again. I knew I was. I felt it. My family knew it. But those two red lines saved my life.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about your daughter. You grew up pretty rough, baby girl. And what are you doing to prevent that same experience for your daughter?
One of the main things that I'm doing right now is focusing on my mental health. I suffered really bad postpartum after having her, and I went and got help. And then I found out that all these years I have been misdiagnosed. They kept saying I was bipolar. I'm not. I have borderline personality disorder, which is so much worse, I feel like, because there are so many things that tie into borderline personality disorder, and it all comes from trauma. So, the main thing that I am trying to work on with myself is where I know that I lack, which is patience, more gentle parenting than the disciplinary kind of parent. I'm, working on trying to figure out my diagnosis, because borderline personality disorder, it is confusing. It is something that is never going to go away. It is something that I have to live with for the rest of my life. But I know that if I get my mental health in check and I become stable, I am a really good mom. Do not get me wrong. Like, I take care of my kid before anything, but I know that I could be better. I could be a little bit more patient with her. I could be a little bit more understanding. Something else that I struggle with is I struggle with not being able to understand at the moment when she's upsetting me that she is not an adult. She does not think like I do. I'm having to still, she's 3 years old now and I'm still learning. First time mom thing, this is not easy, especially being a single parent. She does have anger issues. She does have quite the baby K attitude, but I'm trying to learn how to direct her differently. A lot of that behavior comes from her learning it from me. And, everybody think, not everybody, but, certain people in my life think that I'm a bad mom because of it. But one thing I learned is this, and rather we want to admit it or not, being moms, our first child is our guinea pig. We do not know what we're doing. And, coming from my background, I didn't allow my mom to parent me. It wasn't the fact that my mom didn't want to parent me. I didn't allow her to parent me. So, like, I wanted it, but I didn't know how to let her do it. I had so many trust issues. I sit down with myself all the time because, when your kids hit different milestones, they start acting different and you've got to switch up your parenting. And so every once in a while, I sit down and I'm like, okay, what am I lacking in? What could I be doing better with her? Like, for instance, I'm really bad at diving into my phone and just zoning out. And I feel like most moms nowadays have that problem, the technology. But I'm trying to sit down with her and do numbers and color and watch a movie, eat popcorn together. Like, we have lots of movie nights because that's all that girl wants to do is watch TV. I just want to be able to spend as much time with her as possible before I have to start working. Because just recently, I left her here in Texas with my sister to go pursue a welding career. In 2021, I went back to a single mom home and I was able to have Alessia with me. I decided that I was going to go back to high school. I got my high school diploma. And I don't know if you ever remember me saying, I'm never going back to school. I went back to school. So baby K was lying. And then shortly after, I went to welding. In 2022, my best friend was murdered. I am still dealing with that, and it's really hard. People with borderline personality disorder, they they have a favorite person, and Angie was my favorite person. And it's been really hard for me to make friends and keep friends since then, because things like that, traumatic experiences like that, alter our brain chemistry. And it's just been really hard. Grief sucks. It's been a year now, and it still creeps up on me. Like, I'll hear a song that one of the verses might remind me of her, or I'll see something when we're out in town, me, my mom, and my daughter, and I see something that I knew she would like. I'd start crying. And then when Alessia asks where she is, it breaks my heart.
I'm so sorry for your loss, honey.
Thank you.
It's awful to lose someone that you care about.
Angie was there for me throughout my whole entire relationship, throughout my whole entire pregnancy. I told her everything. And I've only made one friend since her death. I'm just really bad at communicating, period, with my friends. And like, no offense towards them, but like, it doesn't come off to the top of my head. Oh, let me text my friend and see how they're doing, Because I'm so focused over here on trying to, fix myself and fix my mistakes to the best of my abilities. I'm never gonna go back to, pre-felon me. That's just not a realistic goal to try to set for yourself, in my personal opinion. But what I could do is, next year I can expunge my record if I want to. And I've thought about it. But at the same time, like, I don't feel like it's fair that I should have to hide the fact that I messed up from a company that I want to work for. And although I see it as it is not fair that the world is going to hold this against me for the rest of my life, yes, I feel like it could be changed. That's going to take a long time. People are not going to change their minds about us felons overnight, because of the fact that there are so many felons out there that are still doing the same thing and making it look bad for us ones that are actually getting out and turning our lives around. I've seen so many people that, me and you were locked up with that have went back to prison so many times, or, people that I went to TYC with that are constantly still getting in trouble till this day. One of my ex-girlfriends just recently got out of prison that I was in TYC with. I will say it's the people that I thought would go back that surprised me the most. I watched your interview with Nyala, our little munchkin there. I've seen her come a long way. I I honestly thought that it was a possibility she would end up back in there. And she has constantly proved everybody wrong. She, in my opinion, I think she's doing great.
On that same note, let's finish up with what do you advise for someone that has a criminal history, possibly in and out? You've made it 5 years. What's your advice for changing it up and changing your future and doing well out of incarceration?
Don't choose the same friends. More than likely, you were hanging around the wrong people when you were out on the outside anyway. It's never a good idea to go back. I honestly believe, Marcy, that if I can do it, out of all people, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Say to yourself, mind your own business. Chase after that money, become stable, get yourself your own place, get yourself your own car. Be smart, make plans. Don't tell anyone your plans, and do it by yourself, and use all the people that have ever doubted you, who have ever said you're not going to make it, you can't do it. Use them as your motivation, because my haters are my best. For all the people out there that said I would not make it and I was going to end up back in prison or dead on the street or whatever, anybody who has ever doubted me, I thank them, because without them, I wouldn't be here. So I thank the people that doubted me, but the person that I think the absolute most is my daughter. I owe that girl my entire life. And if you see that somebody that you were in prison with is doing good on the outside and y'all were friends on the inside, still be friends with them, because those are the people that are going to most understand your situation and who you're going to feel comfortable with going to talk to about what you're struggling with at the moment. It is not easy. People are going to still judge you for your past. Don't give up, though. Don't give up. Take care of yourself. Take care of you. You cannot help anybody else if you can't even help yourself. You got to be the best you so that you can be the best you for the people that you love.
I love it, Kay. Thank you so much. I want to make a final thought about your story as a whole. You experienced violence at a very, very young age, and that violence kind of bred anger. Violence
Yes.
begets violence. And then you did committed acts of violence, and then you got incarcerated, and your violence beget violence from the state, from the staff, and it's just a cycle. So at some point, we have to start seeing that as the whole picture. I feel like
Right.
there are a ton of things that could have happened for you as a young lady before you were in middle school that could have prevented that entire path. And I hope
Right.
that us as an entire community as a whole will kind of look at that big picture and see that incarceration might not have been the best answer for you. It could have been prevented had we stepped in at a much earlier stage. So thanks so much
Right.
for sharing your story.